Just going through a Wonderdraft tutorial after posting a few of my maps up the other night. So what I usually do is go 1080p. I guess A3 is probably not a bad idea as well, but I usually use the paper theme. Okay, makes a normal paper map. I normally use the raised landmass to make it look a little bit more like how a coastline would actually form. The only issue you have with doing it this way is you get the annoying little dots, so you kind of need to shrink this down, the tooltip, but that tends to make a bit of a better coast with a smaller tooltip anyway. Okay, so I'm just going to make a quick island. Let's first change the water. Normally I use hatch pattern and change my coastline to a blue. Symbols, buildings. Grab myself a suitable castle that is inked or penned. This one here. Shrink it down to appropriate size, usually 40, 45 I use for the castles. Then we'll make a town next to it. That will do. So I normally make the town buildings about 35. I will place it over here. We'll grab this town, advanced, mirrored, mirrored again. So the mills I usually make a little smaller. Place some fields down. I kind of usually do this a few different sizes just to make it seem like the fields that would be put in by the people in these places. Grab ourselves a mill. Pop it in there. What else do we have? A few of the random buildings. Jump down to the trees, wherever they're hidden. Sorry, I normally use the penciled pine. Usually at about 50, and I try and make it look relatively natural by just waving it around a little bit. So we'll grab a path. I normally use the dotted path. Standard colors are fine. Might just end that right there. continue the road. And the road to go all the way to the mill. Again. Pop down a few more trees. Where we think they might be. A couple more houses. Back down to size 35. Just change between mirroring and not mirroring, just so it makes the houses look very different. We'll add some more fields. Now I usually only use the field 1 mill flat and the field 5 fence flat. It's just a style thing. I think you could just as easily use the some of the other fields. I just didn't think that they looked quite right for the maps that I was making, so I just have stuck with field 1 and field 1 mill flat, and I just mirror them for the different directions. And I try and make it look like there's the occasional house garden. Anyone who's been around a bit in Southeast Asia or some of the poorer European countries will see that it's a fairly common thing for gardens to be interspersed throughout where people have got their houses, and I gather it was a bit like that in the day, so I just try and emulate that look. Grab some more trees. Size 50. Pop them down there. Mountains, I usually always use penciled mountains large and penciled mountains small, just because I think that they're the best looking mountains for this style, and then I just try and make them look a bit like a mountain range would, just by adjusting the size as I go. It doesn't look quite right, but that's okay. Use a larger mountain. Now we'll change back to the trees. Try and get a relatively even spread. Path. Start the path from here. Now here what we'll do is we'll make a mine. This one. The mines I like to make relatively small. Pop that there. Grab a couple of tents. Come back up to 35. Maybe 30. I adjust these depending on how I put them. Change it off of mirrored so we can have a little bit more variety. Grab some more trees, spread them around the camp. More over here, a little bit down here. So we want to have a ruin on the other side of this castle, sorry, on the other side of this island. Find where it's stashed. Maybe this one. Mirror it, make it a bit smaller. Grab some more trees. I mean, it doesn't really matter if the trees are 45, 50. I mean, I mean, the trees are going to be different sizes anyway, so I'm usually pretty rough with that because I want it to look, well, like trees. Where I do sometimes adjust how the trees are done is around a town, where I'll make it seem as though the trees have been cut back by making them thick and then kind of a patterned cut off. It just makes it look like they have cleared trees for the houses or the fields. I just feel like it shows us a little bit more realistic. We will see if we can pop down a farm just here. I mean, it kind of depends on how you like to do it, but I do sometimes change the rotation of these slightly just so it doesn't look like everything is on the opposite 45-degree angles, and you have a little bit more variety, but people don't seem to really be able to tell when it's on the 45, as long as you don't have too many farms or too many fields or in too close together. It kind of does start to look a little bit odd when you do that, but I think just changing the size usually is enough. So we'll just do a couple of farmhouses for this one. Just so it's a fairly natural looking grouping of buildings that you would see at a farm. And then try and make it look as though they put these fields in. Grab some more trees. Spread them around the place so it looks relatively natural. Then I usually add one of these. I mean, there's a lot of different patterns you can choose, but I normally use this one. Label. Make that font a little bit smaller. Kind of Morn. We might just change this font. I don't know why it's on Lancelot. Usually use Marco 1. Just a little smaller. Change this to Marco 1 as well. Just move these into the right position. Now we want to make this smaller again. and line these up as well as I can. What else have we got going on there? Southern Silver Mine. Line that up as well. So when I do the numbering, what I normally do is pretty much exactly the same, but I change the outline to white. Turn the outline width up to 4, and then I just pop labels down. Number 1, that will be the castle. So the second one was a farm, and so we'll use this one here. Number 2, next label, number 3. And there you pretty much have the style that I use to make this type of map.